All right, welcome back to the series where we are building this AI clone, sort of chat GPT like thing that where you sort of paste in a corpus of text and run it, and then you get an output of text that is sort of speaks um, in that similar language. And I'm using this as an example to teach Python right from scratch. So if you absolutely have never learned Python and you think this is really complicated, that's totally okay. This tutorial and series is for you. And so this is part 3. So go and watch the other parts if you haven't already. And just a reminder, this website is in the description. So open that up and then we can follow along and do this together as we go through the basics of Python and then lead up to this cool AI clone uh, ChatGPT Lite application. Great. So here's the outline that we're working with. Just really quickly, this is part 3. So we're going to talk about lists and putting many variables together. And we're just a few away from actually writing our code before in part 7 we'll actually totally finish the project. So nearly halfway there, which is awesome. All right, so we've done part 1, we've done part 2, and now we're on to part 3. Amazing. Okay, so before we talked about variables, we talked about variables with numbers, and then we talked about variables that can store words in sentences, known as strings. And so those will get you very far, but eventually there comes a time when maybe you need to keep track of a lot of variables. Like here we have like 4 different names I need to keep track of, and I'm just a lazy person. So I don't want to write this code out to initialize all 4 of these variables. Um, and so we put many variables together in something in Python that is called a list. And that might make sense. A list is, many things together. And that's exactly what it is in Python. It's just, we initialize a list called names, and then we save a bunch of strings within that list. And so you might remember this bracket notation. It's coming back here for when we initialize a list. So why don't we quickly do another one like called sports. Oh, we've already done sports. Food, right? So we have these brackets, and then you can put in anything you want, like any string that you want. Pancakes, or it can be any strings, and then just put a comma and then another string, and do whatever you want. Great. Okay, so that's what a string is, and how to, or a list, and how to create a list. So, I mean, that's most of what we're doing today. It's gonna be a short video. It is, yeah, this is a fairly simple part to the series, especially if you really got strings down, because the useful part of lists is slicing. And if you remember from last video, we did a lot of slicing of strings. So if you got that down, this will be really easy because it's just basically the same thing. All right. So similarly to strings, lists inherently have these index values that Python keeps track of for you. And so every item in a list, so a list is made up of items, right? Item 0, item 1, item 2. The items can be really anything. They can be strings, they can be numbers, it doesn't matter. But every item has an index that Python keeps track of for you. So in the same way that all the letters have an index in a string, all of the items in a list have an index. So here we have that same list of names, and then I want to grab the first item. And I can grab, obviously, the second item technically, but the index of 1, the index of 2, right? And here's a bonus, -1. Maybe look that up if that was confusing, but that's not important. right, we can grab things out of the list using their index. Similarly, we can slice things based off of the index name of string. So hopefully that is trivial for you if you've watched the last video. So here we have our first code to write. Why don't you write a line to output Nick and Cole? And so that hint that I gave you, actually I just sort of gave a teaser of that. So maybe you do that and then come back. All right, great job. So to do that, you do names with the brackets, like the same as strings, and then so we got to see what is our starting index. Starting index is, so we have 0, 1, 2. So starting index is 2 because we want to start there. And then, oh, sorry, I'm lying. So if we were to put -1 here, or if we were to put 3 here, it would actually just output Nick, right? Because it's going to be 2, and then we get to 3 and we don't want it, right? This last number is exclusive, so we can't, so we don't include, right? It's everything up to that last one. So what to do is you just kind of have this emptiness right there. And that's basically saying, like, go right up until the end. Because if you were to put the last index, it would exclude it. But if we have an empty thing, then we go right up to the end. And so you can put these empty ones wherever you want. So that would be the whole list. Or if I put a 2 here, maybe guess what would happen. Okay, so what would happen? What would happen would be going up to 2, starting at the very beginning, right? Because maybe make sure you understand the difference between this and this. Because this would be the whole thing and then ending at 2. Oh, sorry. There is no difference. Trick question. Because in the start, it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. So yeah, that's a bit of a tricky thing. Not super important, especially for this, but you know, if you're going to use this in school or something, teachers like to sort of use that stupid stuff on quizzes. But for here, we're building projects, so memorizing all these weird sort of small things don't matter. So sorry for that tangent. Okay, right, this is going to be a quick video. So similarly with strings, again, there are some certain built-in Python magic function things that can do that can manipulate lists for you. So we have 2 lists, one of numbers and one of names again. And so we have nums.reverse. And if this sort of syntax is confusing with the dot and the parentheses, don't worry about it. Just sort of recognize the pattern. That's all I think is really important for this code. And recognize that Python has some built-in things that are useful. So if we want to reverse a list, all we have to do is do nums.reverse, and it reverses. If we want the sort to list again, then it sorts it for us. And then you can remove an item from the list, or an element from the list, and then I make a new list, and then add 2 things to that list using append. It's going to add something to the end of the list. So again, don't try and memorize those things. Just recognize that they exist. Like try and just sort of get familiar with this pattern of writing code. This is like a new type of line maybe than you've seen. And then move on to the challenge, where I want you to remove the punctuation and then add on to the end of the list a food. So you can reference this code up here to do that. Okay, so go ahead. Nice job. Wonderful. I'm not going to do this one because I'm trusting you to complete it. And if you need help, go ahead, ask ChatGPT. Okay, great. That is it for today on lists. Next time we're going to start writing some functions, aka what it means to put lines of code together. And so I would say this part concludes the total foundation layer of what we need. And next time you're going to start to recognize sort of how we're working towards building our final project. if you take a look at the code right now, you'll start to recognize some things, maybe some patterns you'll start to recognize, which is totally the goal here, just to dive in and get familiar with the code and then slowly, slowly start to understand. So I think get ready for part 4 tomorrow, where I think we'll actually really, really start to build towards this cool AI clone. So thank you for your time, and I hope you've learned some things about lists in Python. So thank you. Goodbye.